gonna change my angle so that you can see, because it looks like I'm backlit. That's a little better. You can actually see me. Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Hello, hello, hello.
Feeling better, I see.
A lot better. A lot better. Yes.
Good to see you.
I know. I truly, truly appreciate it. It was so sweet of all of you. It was wonderful. I was very grateful that my voice did not give out during my classes. I was getting coughing fits after my class. So I was like it was like after it hit me, and my voice felt really scratchy, and I kept coughing, and I was like, at least it's happening after.
Oh boy, that's so hard. Wow.
Yeah.
Glad you're better.
Yeah. But the whole experience, this has been really great. It's been a great opportunity to meet so many people that I admire. Folks that I have their books. I was completely panicking when I was leading a plant walk, and so I had this group, and we're walking around the grounds here around the hotel, and we're talking about urban ecosystems and like the patterns, the relationships between pollinators and plants, and I'm going to town, and this author that I love, I have like 2 or 3 of her books, and she just comes and just joins the group. She just like shuffles into the circle, and I'm like catching her and I'm going, don't freak out.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really awesome. It was really awesome. It was just in the herbal world, I mean, big heavy hitters were here this weekend. So it was really, it was a really cool opportunity. Let me see here. Let's see. Not pin. I want to spotlight. There we go. All right. Hi, Sophia. Hello. And hello, Patricia. Hello. Let's see here. All right, so let me share my screen. Dun, 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 dun. Ta-da. Yeah, I was so excited. I was able to do my presentation for AHG on Canva, and I made things with video and stuff. And if any of you have to make presentations, I honestly recommend I can't recommend Canva enough. It's so cool. Let's see. Share. Come on. Oh, present. There we go. Boom, ba-doom. Yeah, it's great. There's so many cool tools on here. All right. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. I'm currently tuning in from Bethesda, Maryland. So I'm somewhere different today. I was taking part in the American Herbalist Guild 33rd Annual Symposium. So I've been here this is my 4th day. This is the last day doing classes, and I'm a board member of the American Herbalist Guild. So we were doing meetings and meet and greets. I was like nonstop this weekend. I slept so well last night. I was out. Brian, my husband, was like, he came with me, and he's like, oh, let's watch a movie. And no, my eyes shut. I was down for the count. But yeah, it was a great experience. And if any of you are herbally inclined, it's a very cool experience. You get to meet so many people. It's everyone's so accessible. So there's a lot of like meet and greets and things like that. So you're able to talk to your favorite authors, to your favorite herbal instructors. I was having great conversations with like botanists. Like it was a very planty thing, and everybody was decked out in plant clothes, plant themed clothes. So of course I was joining in. I'm today I'm wearing another shirt with plants on them. Yeah, it was a really awesome experience. So if anybody ever has the opportunity to join these types of things, you just meet really lovely people. So for today is the open forum. So it's part of our Urban Garden learning series. We switch it up every week. So sometimes we have classes, we have Q&As, plant clinics, and open forums are just hangouts. We can talk anything planty if you'd like to share anything. It's kind of a anything goes hangout. So of course, I'm happy to take any plant related questions, anything at all. So feel free to toss those in the chat, or I can spotlight you, no problem. Again, this class will never ever be monetized. If you would ever like to, and there's no obligation, here is my Venmo link because people have asked for it, but no obligation to do so. Of course, anything is appreciated, but you just honestly don't have to. And folks that have been asking if I would set up a Patreon, it's set up now officially. So feel free to check that out. I'll be adding more content and levels and all that jazz in there. So again, upon request, there it is. And yeah, and lastly, if you do want to get in contact, you can reach out at info@urbangarden.eco. Some of you might have my other email, jocelyn@urbangarden.eco. It's still valid. It's just that inbox has just gotten so out of control, that I've been just kind of directing everybody to info so I can stay more on top of it, because that other email, yeah, I get like 200, about 150, 200 sometimes emails like every 2 days. It's a lot to shuffle through. So yeah, I've been directing folks to info, and you can, if you prefer Instagram, you want to connect there, you can check that out, and the website as well. I'm actually updating a bunch of downloadables, so I'm going to be happy to share that all out with you. Oh, that's housekeeping. 1 second. Oop. Oh, we're okay. Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, so I'll be making those available. I'll also post them in the Facebook group. So if that's easier, totally can do that. All right, let me stop the share, and I see some. Yeah, yes, Brenda, yes. No, I do feel so much better. I was just so grateful that the majority of it was like cleared up before I had to come out here, because that would have been terrible. Oh, Paulette, thanks. I love bringing you guys to travel with me too. And in a few weeks, actually, which is terrifying. But it's like the second week of December, I believe. We're going to be going to Costa Rica, and I'm going to be tuning in from there. So we are going because my husband and I have land there. It was family land that we purchased to keep in the family, and we're going to be setting up an ecological center and planting like a garden and everything there. And so we're going to basically break ground in December. So we're going to get a fence put in around the grounds. My mom has already been getting lemon trees and different trees together, and they're getting them ready so that when we go, we can plant them on the grounds to kind of inaugurate our our ecological center. So we're super excited. And so I'm going to be tuning in from there. And so, yeah. Jamie, yes, it is. It's very odd to see no plants around you. Yes, yes. It's the grounds are beautiful. But yeah, the rooms are so stark. It's like it feels very I don't know, empty, sanitized. I'm not sure what the best word would be, but I mean it's comfortable, but yeah, it definitely it's too much white. I need more green. I need more green. Um thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I was I felt blessed to even just be here and be able to share with everyone. And um I was definitely nervous. If those of you who saw the post on Facebook, I didn't know that I would be presenting my first talk was outside, so no problem. But my second talk was in an amphitheater. And I did not know that. I thought it was just in a little conference room. So that's what I was expecting. And on Friday, uh, they direct me to they're like, oh, this is going to be your room on Sunday. And my jaw dropped. I was like, no. It was the biggest room I've ever done a presentation in. It was like a full-on college lecture hall, this thing, with like a projector, huge screen. It was very intimidating. But yeah, I survived, but and folks seemed to like it. So I was like, all right. But I was a ball of nerves, and I'm very tiny. So if any, I know some of you have come to my walks in New York City. That attend these Monday sessions. And so if you know me, I'm only 5'1". I'm a very tiny person. And it was hilarious. I'll share some pictures on Facebook, and my colleagues were taking pictures of me when I was doing my talk, and I'm like, there's the podium. And so I'm like, kind of like this with the with the microphone. I was like, you can see that I'm like craning my neck because I'm so tiny in comparison. So, oh man, but it was great. It was great. So yes, feel free to yeah, drop any questions in there. Hello, Synth. Hello. Oh, what was it? There was something else and I completely forgot. It like came and left. It'll come back. It'll come back. Oh my gosh, are there any are there any questions today? I get it. It's Monday morning, right? Oh gosh. Are there no questions today? Um I guess I could mention too, in the meantime, yeah, we were preparing for um, a 4-day trip. We were really trying to make sure that all our plants were set, because now it's a little bit more precarious because of the temperature situation. So here in New York City, we're entering winter. We're in the fall, and it has been a rapid drop in temperature very, very quickly. The humidity as well has dropped significantly. So we've had to pull out our humidifier and have the little humidifier set up. We just had to start running them in our bedroom. So we have one on each side of the bed. We had to move some plants around. So I did move. I moved our Rhaphodophoras, our Tetrasperma, and our Decursiva. I had to move them into our bedroom because they're going to get more light. So they were in the bathroom, but our bathroom window opens up into a courtyard. So while it's very bright in the summer, in the winter, there isn't enough light coming in. And in our bedroom, we have two big ash trees in front that actually just got inoculated. So if anyone is not aware, you can actually basically vaccinate trees. And so ash are currently really are a threatened species here in the Northeast because of the emerald ash borer, which is a little beetle. It's really beautiful, green and iridescent. Very tiny, but it goes in and its larvae basically eat the insides of the tree. And ash, yeah, so they're being decimated for that reason. So we got they're inoculated, they're good, but they are deciduous trees, so they're going to lose all their trees, all their leaves, and they're already starting. So in the next few weeks, it's going to probably be done, and that opens up a lot of light, thankfully. So it's not as strong. We have a southeast window, so it's not as strong, but it's pretty nice direct light during the winter months. So a lot of our plants are very happy in our bedroom. So we had to kind of play some plant Tetris. So I was moving them around and yeah, and getting them like prepared because I was like, all right, let's start this big change. And my sister-in-law, so my husband's little sister, she's the one that's staying at the house, making sure the animals and the plants are good. But yeah, preparing and then making sure everything's good, and we're gonna have to really extra prepare when we're leaving to Costa Rica, because that's going to be a three-week trip. So yeah. Oof. Oh, let me see here. Awesome questions. Here we go. Ooh, Cheryl. So Cheryl asks, what is the best way to propagate a jade plant? That's great. Jade plants, thankfully, are incredibly easy to propagate. So jade plants, for those that don't know, so that's some Crassula, I think it's obovata. And so with those, you can propagate a couple ways. So you can propagate through the little leaflets, these little leaves. They're technically, I guess they're not technically leaves. They're what are called phylloclades, but they work similarly to a leaf. And those have the capacity to propagate. So how you would do that, now some folks just do a nice succulent soil mix, and they'll place them kind of in a circle. They'll keep that just the top inch kind of moist, and kind of let them root like that. I personally had no success that way. I would, maybe out of 10 of them, I would get maybe 2 that would root and the rest would just rot. So what I personally do is either use perlite instead of soil, or leca instead. So leca are those little red-brown clay balls that you see now that it's called lightweight. It's a lightweight expanded clay aggregate, is leca. So you can purchase that. And so what I do is I put it into the saucer of the pot. So I actually don't put them in an actual pot. I put it into a saucer, put some leca in there, and then I put my little propagations on there, my little leaflets. I put a little bit of water where it's not over the leca, it's under the leca, but it's evaporating. And so what ends up happening is that, one, they're not in direct contact with the moisture, so it lessens that possibility for rot. but they do start rooting, and then the roots just go into these little crevices between these little stones, basically. And I've found so much success that way. That is exclusively how I root all my succulents now. Is in leca. I'll do a big video on that. I'll shoot some video. Maybe I can do that for next week for class. So I'll show how I do that and how I have them set up in my windows. I literally have my propagations set up in my windows like that. Now, so it's very, very easy. Now with if you wanted to actually propagate a stem, you can actually do that as well. So if, let's say, you have a beautiful little jade plant and then you have this really odd kind of stem that grows in an odd way, and you kind of want to keep it compact, you want to keep it kind of aesthetically pleasing to you, you can just cut that stem. Now, I would recommend to let it callus. So you're going to let it basically scab. This can take 24 to 48 hours to really give you a nice healing kind of, so that it gives it time to heal that wound. And then you can pop it into the dirt. You can pop it right into the dirt with the mother plant, with the main plant. You can start it over again. You can also put it in the same kind of thing with leca, but maybe instead of a saucer, since it's going to be a little top heavy, you can use like a little vase. So what I do with my bigger cuttings is I get from the dollar store the little votive candle holders. So they're about this tall. So I can put the leca, and then I can put my little stalks of kalanchoes or chryssulas or anything like that, and they stay upright. And I just do it that way. But with leca again, and I just keep the water level right below the leca, and it's great. Highly recommend that. You can put them into something with just water, but you want to keep the water level really low because you don't want to rot the whole thing out. And then once you really get roots, I would say to definitely upgrade it into substrate. Because that's just the issue with things that are succulents, is prolonged exposure like that to water can cause them to rot. But jade is super easy, super easy to propagate. So you won't have any problem with that. I think it's Sophia. And is asking how to grow aloe vera in a pot. Okay, great question. So with aloe vera, also very easy plant to grow. Now they really like a well-draining mix. So you're going to want to have, you can do a mix that has a base of succulent soil. You're going to probably want to add a little bit more perlite to that mix. A lot of succulent soils just don't have enough perlite for some reason. I mean, some good quality ones do, of course, like Fox Farm has a great succulent soil. But so you're going to have a base of succulent soil. You're going to add a little bit more perlite, and you can add a little bit of orchid bark, just a little bit for nutrition. You can add some leca. I like adding leca or lava rock. Again, more grit. You want it to be a very well-draining mix, and that has a lot of kind of pockets where oxygen can hang out, right? You don't want a regular potting mix that's all brown. That's going to lead to your plant to rot. That's going to imbibe. It's going to hold so much water. Again, it's going to cause it to rot. So a well draining mix. They do well in terracotta. If you're starting it when it's little, I would recommend keeping it in a nursery pot, those little plastic pots that they come in, just because younger plants, they need a little bit extra moisture in comparison to larger plants. So you can keep it in a nursery pot until it gets large enough where you're like, all right, I can upgrade this little guy. And then you can put it into terracotta. Terracotta is really great because it's going to allow for that air exchange. It wicks water away from really damp soil. So it kind of helps regulate that moisture content in the soil. So definitely terracotta. And in terms of just like overall care, they like to be kept in a warm place. I wouldn't recommend putting it anywhere where it's going to get really cold if you are in an area that, has a very heavy winters. They're super cold because they can freeze. So they can freeze. They're not frost tolerant. And in terms of light, so they would prefer to be pulled away from a south or western window. I currently have my aloe veras. I have a few in my southeast window, but they're pulled away. So like, let's say here's my window. They're kind of like in an outcrop like this. So this is very similar to how our windows are at home, where the window and then it's like a little pushed in corner and we have our plants there. So they get the light, but it's not in the direct pathway. And with the aloes that are in our western window, it's the same, because if they are in very strong light, they will blush. So basically they start to turn like orange. Sometimes they might turn red. And while it might look really cool, it's actually your plant trying to say, oh my God, I'm getting way too much light. And it's trying to protect itself. It's basically pumping out what are called anthocyanins in an effort to kind of create sunblock for itself, so that it doesn't get harmed. It doesn't get a lot of damage, but it can only do that for so long. So if you do see it turning orange or red, you can just pull it away from that light source. That has happened to me. I had my aloe plant right in front of my western window several years ago. That's when I realized when it started turning orange. I was like, I moved it, and it took a little bit. It took a couple weeks, but then it turned green. So it will go back to green. And now it's very, very happy that way. And then they'll put out pups. So for pups, I would tell you to wait, honestly, before removing them until they're maybe 1/3 of the size of the mother plant. If you even have to take them out at all, I prefer to leave my pups inside until they take over the pot. And then once I have to repot, then I can go in and separate them. But otherwise, I don't really like to disturb the soil. And lastly, in terms of like humidity and water, with my aloe plant, when they're younger, you're probably going to end up watering them about every 10 days or so. Sometimes a week might be a little too often. It depends on your home, of course. If you have a very warm home, very kind of dry, warm home, it'll dry out much faster. So you just want to make sure it's completely dry before you water it again. So do not water it if it's still damp. Now with my larger aloes, I water those about every 3 to 4 weeks. So when I water my ZZ plants, we water them at the same time. So and with the same with like some of our cacti. So we kind of time that together because they get very little water. But yeah, when they're tiny, it's a little bit more often than that. And in terms of humidity, I mean, they're great with just average humidity, 40%, 50%. They don't want to, they can, of course, do higher, as long as you have really good air circulation in the house. Because if it's very humid but very cool in your house and there's very bad circulation, that can prompt it to start rotting. But yeah, so that was all I could think of for aloe vera. So I hope that helped. Deanna, let's see, Jocelyn, can you talk about growing trees in pots on an inside screened room? Yes. So it really depends on the species, right? But you can definitely do so. Of course, taking into account what zone you're in and what type of, so if it's an inside screened room, if there's protection, for instance, is there any temperature regulation? Does it have like a shade canopy? So those things need to be taken into account. If it's a local species and you don't have to really, and it is exposed to, the temperature changes basically of outside, you don't have to worry too much. There are plenty of trees that are being kept in pots that are deciduous species, so they'll they'll lose their leaves in the winter and they'll be totally fine and come right back. The only issue is just to consider is that plants in pots, depending on the pot itself, it really becomes a kind of um, interesting thing when watering them. So if you, I've seen a lot of trees being kept in pots that don't have drainage holes, and so then that gets very tricky because the bottom might still have quite a lot of moisture, and these are bigger pots, but they're doing that because they don't want, a bunch of water just kind of leaking from the pot. Um, so younger trees are going to want more moisture, so they'll probably appreciate that a little bit. But making sure your mix is very well draining is going to be very important. Now, some species don't really want a grainy mix. If you're working with like a conifer, if you have like arbor vitaes or small yew trees or things like that, they prefer a little bit more organic matter as opposed to a lot of grit and gravel in their mixes. But yeah, so it's really checking on the species. It's figuring out the water. They're going to need a lot of water when they're young. There are some really great things, especially to help your trees during the summer months. They're called, oh my gosh, it's called like a donut, like a watering donut. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but basically it's you put it around the base of the young tree and you fill it up with your hose, and it looks like almost like the thing that you put on when you're traveling, like the travel pillow. It kind of looks like that, but it's full of water. And then you open this little thing, and basically it slowly waters, deeply waters the young tree, slowly over a period of a couple hours, to give it a nice saturated watering. And so it's better than you standing there with the hose to really make sure that you're really getting it. And so I was like, that's a wonderful invention. Props to that guy. Great.
Well, oh,
So,
well,
but
thanks, Jocelyn. I was thinking, how about a fig tree
yeah,
that would produce fruit? It doesn't need to be pollinated. I could do,
oh yeah,
on the screen porch, and I'm in Florida, and it's in the screen porch is facing east, so it gets that morning sun.
perfect.
And there's a floor above me, so the ceiling's the concrete. It's just the front that's screened, but it gets nice light.
That'd be
So I
perfect.
could
Yeah.
try that fig. Okay,
Yeah, a fig would
great.
definitely work. I with citrus, they need a lot more sun, so you would
Yeah.
probably end up having to either set up a light, which is I know,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But no, fig would totally would work really well like that if you're trying to, yeah, get something that would fruit for you. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
they're great.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's going to be fun.
Oh, pictures.
Okay,
Send me pictures.
I will.
Terry, did you say your husband was into bonsai plants? I recently bought a chunk and it's sprouting roots already. They also sent me skinny twigs and they not only sprouted roots, but lots of leaves. When do I put them into bonsai soil? Okay. So if so with the bonsais, so basically the bonsai are just it's this uh, how do I best describe it? It's like this artwork that is done with the plants where they purposely control them by cutting by wires in many cases to keep them pretty compact in the long term. So these are usually plants that would grow just normally, and they're just kept down, basically shrunk down to size, and it's a very laborious process. So if they're giving you though a chonk and skinny twigs, so so that's interesting. So I know that sometimes people say that they're selling bonsai plants, like so they're saying like, oh, here's some seeds for bonsai trees and things like that. But the seeds wouldn't just grow into the bonsai. The seeds would grow into whichever plant. they're supposed to grow into, but it's the person that then has to take control and keep it small. So if they're already sprouting and things for you, I would say to wait until they're nice and established inside the little, if you have them in kind of what, like seed trays, or did you have them like nursery pots or something like that? I would wait until they are nice and established in there, where you really see that they completely get they're root bound, like they're starting to really get take up space in that wherever they are currently, and then you can put them into another container. But in terms of with bonsai soils, so that's usually for species like coniferous species, or different plants that do like that well draining, very rocky type of mix. And then you would have to just keep them small. So through training them essentially with clippers. There are some wires that can be sold for that purpose too, to if you want to kind of control the growth habit of the tree, and also to it stimulates the trunk to kind of get thicker. So that's how I understand it. I know that the people who are claiming that they're selling bonsai seeds or things like that, it's like one of those scams, because they're not explaining that you have to do the work to make any plant can be a bonsai, honestly. So it's really about you kind of taking it upon yourself to keep it compact. So it's not going to automatically grow into a bonsai. Yeah.
I can show you. It's
Yes. Oh, do you know what species that is? Hold on, I'm gonna spot.
it's supposed to be a weeping willow.
Oh,
It's
that
a
is
lot
so
of roots,
great. Yes.
and but there's no leaves on the chunk, but there's leaves on these.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and these sprouted within 1 week. There's actually 3 of them, but there's 2 in this one. So it's from a reputable place. All of the sites use the same company,
Okay.
and it wasn't a lot of money either, but so at this rate, I don't know if you can see the detail of how. That's why I was wondering, is it time to take it out of the water?
Yeah, well, with that one, definitely. That one you can definitely move. But with willows, they do appreciate wet feet. So they do appreciate a mix that holds a little bit more moisture. But yeah.
Okay. So I bought the soil that's labeled bonsai soil, and it looks like all pebbles.
Yes. And so that's why I'm thinking, because with that is meant more for species that like to that like very well draining soils, and kind of want to dry out between waterings.
Okay.
But the willows tend to want a little bit more moisture. So they do better in with a little bit more organic material in their soil, like maybe
Like,
a little bit of peat, maybe a little bit of like orchid bark, yeah, maybe to just a little bit more organic, because I think if it was straight pebbles, unless you're going to be actively watering it, it might just be a little bit more work if it's just the pebbles, because then you have to rehydrate it fairly often, because
okay,
it's not
that's good to know.
yeah.
Um,
So that's one issue, is if you do have things that are in leca, they will dry out faster. So you have to kind of keep an eye on them. So for some folks, it's like, oh no, it's a little more work than I wanted. So yeah, you can, but yeah, they appreciate a little bit more moisture. And but yeah, I mean, I've seen willows kept very small and kept as bonsai. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a very cool experiment. I haven't done it myself. But that, yeah, please, if
Yeah.
you start working and like pruning them and wiring them and everything to keep them tiny, like I would love to see that.
Okay.
Definitely share.
Will do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shirley, hi, my silver sword was growing really well over the summer and then it stopped growing a few weeks ago. What is strange is that it stopped with a few leaves about to open but never did. What could be wrong? Great question. So Shirley, are you in an area that is changing seasons currently? So for us, we had that same issue. I actually had to go in and so my husband we're in New York City. So for us, summer ended and we went into fall. And so that means that there was a change, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with like the humidity dropped. So humidity is a big issue, especially when leaves are unfurling. If there's a change in humidity, that can cause this basically the whole process to kind of stop. And then what happens is that the leaves start to rot rather than opening because they're not getting enough energy. So putting out a leaf takes a lot of energy on behalf of the plant. And if it's not getting enough energy in, basically in the form of light and producing those sugars, if it then can't get enough energy, it kind of stops whatever process it's kind of pushing its energy into. And so because of this, like we were having like 80, 70 degree days. And then it just dropped into the 50s and into the 40s. It was a very, very fast drop for us. So what ended up happening is the plants that were in the process of unfurling that were closer to the window, we lost a couple leaves like that. So like our Congo, the leaf completely rotted out. I had to end up just cutting it off. The same thing happened with our Chaco. So I was really disappointed because our Chaco survived about with thrips. It was finally putting out a leaf and it looked like it was going to be a really nice big leaf. And we lost the leaf. It's putting out another one, but it was still really disappointing. And then my husband has a ring of fire philodendron, and the leaf was in the process of coming out and it just stopped and it looked like it started turning brown. And so what we had to do is I just went in there and started, I broke basically the tip off, unfortunately, but I had to unfurl it. So I had to physically unfurl it and now it's opening and it looks like it's going to be fine except for the tip. But it's going to be fine. And I had to do the same with our philodendron, the luxuriance, babe. Is that what it is? The luxurians. Yeah, and that one also, it got stuck in its cataphyll. So with philodendrons, they have here's the leaf, and they basically have a little covering that protects the leaf and kind of keeps it from drying out. And then that cataphyll is supposed to open up and then the leaf comes out. But because the humidity dropped so quickly, the cataphyll actually like shriveled. And so therefore it was no longer supple enough. So it couldn't open. Like it just got stuck. So I had to physically go in there, cut the cataphyll off and expose the leaf. And now the leaf is coming out. So if you are in somewhere that's experiencing a change of light, because that does change. So summer, we have a lot more light, and into the fall and into the winter, the light intensity is actually dropping, and also the duration of time. So you get much less sunlight to work with during the day. So a lot of plants just start kind of going into a rest period, a dormancy period. And even though a lot of the species that we have at home are tropical, and they're like, we don't really have a dormancy period. There are times, even in tropical regions, like the wet season and the drier seasons. And so it's not a true dormancy period, but they will basically stop once they're out of their growing season. Let me see if oh, you're in Toronto. Yes, then definitely. I would say it's literally in the last few weeks, the intensity of light has been dropping, and also the humidity, the air is getting drier. So I would say to, if you're really losing those leaves, I mean, we'll see if you are losing them, right? Because so if they never opened, what you could do is try to see if you can personally try to open them. If they're stuck, for instance, sometimes there's like those memes that it looks like a ballet slipper, or it looks like Cinderella's sisters when they were trying to put her stepsisters when they were trying to put the shoe on, and that's how the leaves look when they're coming out. And so sometimes you actually just have to you can use like a Q-tip and just kind of pull that tip out, to help the leaf unfurl. So if you want to try to do that, you can, and the leaf might end up looking a little wonky, like the Ring of Fire leaf. The whole tip is just gone. but at least the rest of the leaf will be fine, and it'll be able to do its job, which is to collect light and generate sugars for the plant. So I would say if you think you can still open them or save the leaves, definitely try to do so. It's definitely going to want more leaves going into the winter when there's less light to go around. It needs more surface area. So if they're plants that actually retain their leaves. But yeah, so it might honestly have been that whole transitional period. We're done with our growing season, and yeah, so we're done, and the light's getting less, and the dryness is going up. So it's an unfortunate time for plants right now in our in the northern hemisphere. Oh, synth. So same here in Colorado with our ash trees. The ash borer and ours have gotten their vaccinations too. Yes. So yeah, ash trees, it's just crazy. It's how much their species has been decimated. And I just think it's very important to, that the emerald ash borer was introduced due to the lumber industry. So, do keep in mind, if any of you have, for instance, gather firewood, or buy firewood, things like that, and you have a lot of trees in your area, like if on your land, let's say, be aware that a lot of pests can be transported that way. So they are in so the larva is inside of the lumber, and then you bring it home, and it ends up, the actual beetle gets out and starts, if it likes your trees, it ends up being spread that way. So it's very unfortunate how those pests, like the Asian longhorn beetle as well. So it's been eradicated from New York City, but it's still in other states right now, and hoping it doesn't come back. But it's wiped out a lot of our trees. Cheryl, oh, by the way, my Cardi Road is doing so much better that I set him up on the rock tray with water daily. Thanks so much for your guidance. Thanks. That's awesome. I'm so happy when I hear updates like that. So I'm glad that helped. Yeah, the Cardi Roads, they just want a little bit more humidity. It's the Cardi Roads, the Wendlandii, so a couple syngoniums that really just want that extra humidity. Jackie Landis, my palm is suffering and I can't seem to get the watering correct. and would love to see the leca propagation. Yes. So what I'll do is I'll do that next week then. I'll take my laptop, I'll shoot some video, and then when I'm online, I'll just take you in there, so that you can also see some of the stuff in real time, so I can answer questions that way. But yeah, with palms, so do you know what species of palm it is? So there are some palms that don't mind drying out. Others mind it very much. So if it's a parlor palm, a Kentia palm, if it's a Majesty palm especially. So Majesty palms, just so that you're aware, Majesty palms do not like to be indoors. I don't know why they keep selling it to people who are going to keep them indoors. I see them all the time in like Home Depot and Lowe's, and I'm like, oh, you guys are setting these poor people up for failure. So Majesty palms do not like to grow indoors. And Areca, okay, yeah. So Arecas, they really, really like, they don't want to completely dry out between waterings. Do you know what kind of mix do you have? So there are palm mixes. Usually it's the same, honestly, it's the same potting mix that you would use for a citrus tree. So fun fact there. So if you do have a palm and you're like, you don't have like a palm soil available that you can find, use a citrus soil. So citrus and palm soil is honestly, it's almost identical. So you can just kind of swap it out if you need to. There are some that are sold as palm and citrus soil, and that works great. But they do want drainage, but again, like the willows, they want like a little bit of extra organic matter in there to hold onto water, but for longer periods of time. So if the mix is too well draining, then it means like if there's too much perlite in there, it usually means it's just not able to hold in as much moisture. But if the mix is too brown, it could be one that the roots aren't getting as much oxygen. It might be holding water for too long. Are you noticing that it's drying out really fast? How often are you watering it? So it's just the same soil from Home Depot, topped with a palm mix, and it grew mushrooms. Okay, great. So with Home Depot, when they get their plants, usually the mixes that these plants come from the nursery are very peat heavy. They might have a little bit of cocoa coir, but a lot of it is peat heavy. And so the problem with a lot of those mixes is they hold in a lot of moisture, but when they actually dry out, when they like fully dry out, they become like cement. They get, if any of you have ever bought a plant and you let it kind of really dry out and you see that the soil pulls away from the edges of the pot, it almost looks like it's like you could hold it up and it would just be like this one intact thing. And so that's because the soil basically becomes kind of shrink wraps itself, right? Like whoop, it's just kind of, it's completely dehydrated. And what happens is that it kind of sticks to itself, doesn't allow oxygen to come in, and it becomes hydrophobic. So it doesn't allow water to come in. So as you're trying to water it, the water is literally rolling off and going off to the side. It's actually not soaking up the mix. Now, if you put some palm mix on top, you're going to want to mix that into the actual roots. So I would recommend that. I would say to take a look at your roots if you can. It might be a 2-person process. I'm not sure how big your palm is. Now, it does become like cement. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So then I think that's the issue, is that that mix that they come with, it's not meant to be a long-term mix. I don't know why they keep doing this. I think it's the costs. I honestly don't know why they keep using those type of mixes, but it does. So that sounds like that's what's happening. So what's happening is that it's becoming hydrophobic. No water is actually really being soaked in. So it's not making it to where it needs to, it's not making it to those root hairs that need it. And there's no oxygen exchange happening. So your roots are basically dehydrating and suffocating at the same time. So, I mean, a palm mix is great. You just have to get it into the roots. So if you topped it off, depending how much, if you have any left over, for instance, you can just, if you can see about pulling it up, maybe removing some of that peat, that really brown soil that it comes with, trying to kind of scoop that out and kind of mix in some of the palm mix so that it's just nicely evened out. That would probably really make a really big difference for your roots. But yeah, that would probably be the best thing to do. And then it gives you a chance to look at your roots. And so if you do have any root rot, because root rot can not only be caused by overwatering, but also when the plant can't get enough water. And because it starts to basically, the tissue just dies off, it's not getting enough water, and then it starts to rot. So it gives you, so by pulling it out, one, you get a look at your roots to see what's going on. Is there anything rotten that I have to cut off? And then also gives you a chance to really mix up that soil and add that palm mix into the actual mix itself. Because yes, while you water it, especially if it's like cement, it's really not going to be penetrating and going down. And the last thing about the mushrooms, so the mushrooms are fine. So a lot of people panic when they see mushrooms in their mix in their plants, but it's harmless. It just means that there's a lot of probably a lot of organic matter in your mix. So a lot of mushrooms love orchid bark, for instance. So with a palm mix, there is some orchid bark in there. And depending on what company, sometimes they have worm castings and things like that. So if there's some organic matter in there, the mushrooms are like, oh, this is great. So well, it's the mycelium that is inside of your soil, and the mushrooms are just the fruiting body. So it's just the reproductive organ for the actual fungi itself. So it's easy. If you wanted to just pluck them out, you could do that if you'd like. But they won't harm your plant. Just so if anyone is nervous when they see mushrooms, don't worry about it in your house plants at least. Oh, you're welcome, Jackie. No worries. Let's see here. Oh, yes. And so Cheryl says that they're going to try the LECA method and see how it goes. Yes, to try the STEM method. Yes, please let me know. Jade is super, super easy, so you'll be good. Adeline, I have planted a branch in a small container. They do great that way, and just take a while to get going. Yes. You can do that too. So as I mentioned, you can plop it right back into the pot with the mother plant with like the jade if you wanted to. But if you want to try something different, for me, yeah, Leca worked great. Oh, Hank, how much water do you give your ZZ plant? Great question. So I have a few ZZ plants. I have a Zenzi ZZ, which is the dwarf ZZ. Then I have a Raven ZZ that's I love them. They're so beautiful. And then just a regular green ZZ. With these, so I water them. I give them a full bottom water. So they get completely saturated when I water them, and then I don't water them for about a month. So anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. So but when I do water them, they get a full bottom water. So I set them into a container, and I let them sit there for about 30 minutes or so, 20-30 minutes, and let them get completely soaked. And then I don't touch them for weeks. So and they do great that way. So because they do have those little rhizomes. So if anyone hasn't ever seen what's below the soil when they have a ZZ plant, they look like little potatoes. They just have these really cool looking rhizomes, and these are very good at imbibing water and helping retain moisture. They're little stalks as well. So if you do see that your ZZ plant is getting wrinkled, so if the stems look really wrinkled, that means that it's actually not getting enough water. But if it's nice and plump and it looks great, then you're giving it the right amount. But I fully saturate them when I do water them, and then I don't touch them again for about a month. So that's with my my big snake plants, my big dracaenas, and my, what else? Some of my cacti, my big cacti, like my Peruvian apple cactus. I have also another snake plant, but it's what is it? The cobra. It's like a really weird looking, it's the weirdest snake plant I have. And it bends, it's in wavy. I always forget the common name for it. But same, I water them, and with the aloes too, our big aloes. So I water them all around the same time. So it's about every 3 to 4 weeks or so. So about once a month. But when we do water them, it's a full water. So it's not like a little water. It's a full water.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Judy, I think I was being too caring for my snake plant. I got a couple soft leaves. I was watering every 2 weeks. Was that too much? Yes. Exactly. So every 2 weeks is if it's a tiny snake plant, right? So if you have like a 2-inch pot or something very tiny, every 2 weeks or so would actually work pretty well for that, because it's still very young. But once you have an actual nice size snake plant that I would say is probably in a 6-inch pot or more, then yeah, you're going to want to water much less than that. And if you're seeing soft leaves, that is definitely pointing towards root rot. So it's just too much moisture. If some people, they keep their snake plants outside during the summer, and then you might find yourself watering them much more often because they're outside, they're in the sun, they dry out super quick. But in an indoor setting, yeah, it's gonna be much less than that. And make sure too that your mix is very well draining. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I just said okay. I'm listening to what you're saying. Yeah, my daughter bought it from Home Depot, and it's in like a 10-inch pot. And the weird thing is, in Home Depot, I guess they put wood chips on the top, so you really can't tell if it's it's a beautiful plant, but you can't really tell if it's dry because you've got about 1 inch or so of wood chips on the top. And I didn't want to change the pot because the pot already looks too big. So I didn't want to transplant it. But yeah, I think, you're right about maybe I am watering it too much.
Yeah, the Home Depot mixes that the snake plants come with, it's a lot of organic matter for a plant that really just wants a lot of drainage. So it doesn't work very well. So all those wood chips, for instance, that holds water. The wood chips actually hold the water really well. So this works well with a plant that wants to stay, a little bit more like it likes wet feet. That's the common saying. They want to stay wet longer. But a snake plant does not. So they need a lot more of like a perlite rich mix. So I would
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, so should I change the dirt then? Take it out?
Yeah, so I would say, and you can do it with minimal stress to the plant, and that it might be a 2-person job, because if it's a 10-inch pot.
Yes.
But so one person can basically wait till it's dry. So wait till it's dry, because it'll make it easier. So you can kind of like hug and pull up, and so it'll all come up.
Okay,
And then the second person is basically going to pull away the excess soil from around the roots, and like you can leave a little bit, but just, you know, especially from like the base, because sometimes I've seen that a lot of snake plants in these like stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, they top them off, so they plant them so deep. So you really want to make sure that the soil mix is just right above the roots. You don't want it, you don't want like a part of the leaf, right, to be beneath the mix, because that's going to end up rotting.
okay,
So yeah, and then the other person can basically dump in, I would say a succulent mix would work great.
okay,
Yeah, you can just kind of throw in a succulent mix, drop the snake plant down, backfill just a little bit, again, just to the base, and then you're good to go. Yeah. So
okay.
and they're pretty resilient to transplanting. When I've transplanted my big snake plants, I think the most I've ever lost was like two leaves, just due to the stress of the transplant.
Okay.
But even like the big one, I have a giant one that's almost my height, that's next
Oh.
to my side of the bed. And when I repotted it, I didn't lose anything. So
Wow.
they're pretty resilient plants, snake plants. They're a good plant if if any of you are thinking you want like a taller plant that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Snake plants are really, really nice.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Quick question on the snake plants.
Yeah.
What does it mean when they twist a little?
Oh, yes. So sometimes that can be as a reaction to like light and humidity changes. It can cause where it kind of was growing straight and then it kind of does a tilt. So sometimes it can be caused if you're not rotating the plant. It can be caused for that reason. So where it's basically the leaves are just trying to angle themselves to get more light. And sometimes it can actually be caused by humidity changes if it was a brand new leaf. So if it was one of those like leaves that are just coming out and they still are really kind of juicy, right? They're really supple. They haven't hardened off yet. And so what happens is that if there's a humidity change, it causes sometimes some cell death, and basically it restricts the tissues of the plant. And so sometimes you might see a new leaf that either gets like wavy edges or gets like a little twist to it. And it's not just with snake plants. This can happen with other plants. If you have a brand new leaf and the moisture just drops really quickly, it starts to look really weird. And so that it can be a reason for that. But if it's an established leaf, like that leaf has been there for a really long time and now it's twisting, it could be the lighting. So it's just kind of moving. So you could rotate it.
I do.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And see, yeah, because usually they tend to grow pretty straight. They might like they might get lopsided, they might just kind of fall due to weight. But yeah, they tend to stay pretty pretty flat. But there's also mutations. I mean, there are snake plants, for instance, that the cylindrica and different snake plants that do grow in that way as well. And those were all so sometimes, you know, it's fun if you get a really weird leaf and it looks like it might just those end up being what they call sports. And then you can try to see if you propagate that. If you keep getting leaves like that, and then you get a really cool, weird mutant plant out of it.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Tanya, I have stagnation in two plants. One I bought in May, a rubber tree, okay, and another one I've had for over a year, a snake plant. It's not dying or growing. If I didn't know any better, I would think they were fake. No growth in the summer, so I'm worried. Okay. Oh, that was great.
Because I was just looking at my snake plant. I think I might have some of the same, like the little wood chips in the top. But I know last year you said even though they're low light plants, they like the sun. So I started putting it in a brighter spot, and I got like little baby leaves, but they've looked like this since like February. They're
No.
not growing and they're not dying. They're in the west facing window in my front room. And this is a rubber tree plant. I know I showed it to you when I got it in May. And I lost a low leaf when I first brought it home, and I lost one when I repotted it. But since then, nothing has changed. And it's got like the little bud at the top, this little like new leaf. I think that's what that is.
Mhm.
It's like twice as long as it was when I bought it, but that's it. Otherwise, it looks exactly the same. And like I said, I would think they weren't real because there's nothing, they're not doing anything, but they're not dying, which is really good for me.
Exactly. So,
Um,
so that's a
they're not
win.
growing.
That falls into the win category, definitely. They're not,
Yes,
they're
for me,
not dying.
yes.
Yes.
I love how you say how easy jade plants are. I can count on, I've killed 1 million jade plants. I can't
Oh,
live. But yeah, so I don't know. I keep looking at it, but it's not, it doesn't look like it's not getting enough of anything, but it's not growing either.
right. Yeah. I mean, so yes, so we're glad. Okay, it's not dying, but how to stimulate growth. So I think you're in New York too?
Yeah.
So
Washington.
we're out of our growing season, but I mean, if you do have grow lights indoors, you can just pretend it's still the growing season. And so that's what we do with a lot of our plants. We have our grow lights, so they don't even know, the ones that are by the window know that it's the winter. But the plants that are in really inside the home and are in cabinets and stuff, they have no idea. But with these guys, I mean, if you do set up grow lights, and you are able to keep your home at least 70, and up, and the humidity at a pretty good rate, a little like 50 and up. If you're able to kind of simulate that indoors, it might kick them into gear, into kind of thinking, oh, it's still the growing season, I'm going to push out growth. But sometimes it's just adding a little bit sometimes of extra energy. So I would say something like, if you haven't added worm castings are great. It's harder with things like commercial fertilizers, because then that can go sour very quickly.
Okay.
But something like worm castings when it's the growing season right now, if you're not able to kind of simulate those growing conditions, then the plants are just going into dormancy right now. They're just not going to push out growth. So what you could do is, if you just want to kind of let them hang out for the winter, and then once the spring comes, that's when you can start maybe supplementing with something like a compost tea, or with worm castings, adding a little bit of nutrition to kind of kickstart it when it's entering the growing season. You can try that. That usually really helps push out growth, but for now, they're probably just gonna stay like that during the winter, unless you want to, like, I'm gonna set it up and with
Right.
light and stuff and trick them into thinking it's still time to grow. But yeah, no, I mean, sometimes the whole like stagnation, right? When plants kind of just stop growing, there's just something going on, right? So sometimes it's as simple as they got repotted, and the roots have just need time to reestablish themselves. And so when plants get repotted, there is damage to the roots. As much as you might want to be as gentle as possible, there is damage to the roots. And then the plant basically pumps all of its energy into focusing on those roots and getting established. And so there's a common saying, roots before shoots. And so the plant is going to focus on setting up that foundation, so that it's sure it can, collect water efficiently before it puts any energy into putting out new leaves. So if you did repot it, that's what happens, especially if it's happening right before the growing season. For some plants, it's not always the case, but for some plants, this might end up kind of causing them to shift that focus into their roots, and then they're not going to be as productive in growing season. This is sometimes different, like with more fleshier plants, like philodendrons and things like that. You repot them, it's the growing season, and they'll keep putting out growth. But sometimes some plants, they don't have that same reaction. So it can be because of that. Sometimes it could also be like a missing mineral or something in the soil. It could mean that maybe it just needs a little bit more magnesium, or a little bit more nitrogen. I really recommend keeping a fish tank. If any of you really want to kind of give your plants a really diluted form of fertilizer all year round, is just get a fish. So get a goldfish or a betta. Of course, if you have a tank for like the Japanese fighting fish, I wouldn't go any under than 5 gallons. But have a little tank, and you're gonna have to change that tank out about every 2 weeks. So that's a great chance if you time it with your plant watering. That's what we do. Yes, and you have the organic indoor fertilizer. So
But I thought I was supposed to stop, like I did my last round 2 weeks
yes,
ago.
exactly. So I wouldn't recommend that during the winter months. It'll more likely burn your plant during the winter months. But with when you have a fish tank, that is just really gentle, and it's not going to burn your roots. And so we use fish tank water all year round. So if, it's a nice way to kind of kickstart sometimes some plants too, because sometimes it's just that they're missing like that little extra bit of nitrogen or calcium or magnesium that would really help them kind of pump out growth. But since you had repotted, if you repotted it, it could have
late June. Yeah. And I've never, I guess I should probably repot this. I've never repotted it.
You can try to repot it and maybe add some like worm castings in when you're repotting it. I'm glad that you put it in the sun and it started to put out a pup, but then it just but I really found that shift once I started moving my snake plants from the interior to the windows and putting them under grow lights. They just started pumping out babies like no tomorrow. I have so many, like I've had to split some of my snake plants. And it's just, add a little bit more light. They do so much better, and they pump out so much more growth. But I'm not sure why it started putting out the pup, and then it was like, all right, I'm gonna just chill right here. Especially if it was getting a nice amount of light. So it could have just been, again, maybe it just needed something. There was just something missing from the mix, or because that's weird that it would kind of start the process and during active growing season, and then just.
So, yeah. Okay. Good to know. I don't want them to like die in the winter now.
No.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Adeline, I wanted to let you know that you are correct about my large green poinsettia. It is so beautiful with large leaves, with this gorgeous purple lines along the leaves. It is almost, it is almost 2 feet wide and tall and wide. It's taking over my area where I have it sitting, and I've had to move another large plant to a new area as its leaves and branches are taking the space away. In the spring, will I have to transplant it into another huge container? It's certainly looking like it's getting to be a shrub and not a house plant. Yes, so poinsettia are actually will grow like shrubs. In the outside, they grow like trees. So I'm so happy to hear that it's doing so well for you. Because a lot of people, I have not even had much luck with poinsettia, and they're a euphorbia, and I collect euphorbia. I have so many types of euphorbia, and for some reason I can't keep poinsettias happy for more than like a year. It just starts to decline for me, and I don't know why. I experiment every year with one. I'm like, I'm trying again. But I'm so happy to hear how big it is. You will probably have to transplant it into a larger container. You might also have to maybe potentially split it. Because with poinsettia, there's several cuttings basically that are put in the same pot. So you know, depending on if you would rather just put it all in one pot, if it's probably easier to maybe separate it out when you're repotting it into maybe 2 separate pots, and then kind of stake it so that you can kind of keep them more compact. That might be an option. But yeah, it sounds like you might in the spring, that you might have to repot it. They are they're hard to keep indoors, and that's so cool. Can you send me a picture? I really want to see this shrub. That would be awesome. Barbara, can I bring indoors daisies and impatiens for the winter? So with daisies, I think they might be annuals. A lot of daisies are annuals. There are perennial asters, of course, but I mean, I think if you wanted to, if they are a perennial, I mean, you can bring them indoors if you wanted to. With the impatiens, I mean, I know impatiens, but I am trying to remember if they're annuals or not.
They're
Yeah.
sold as annuals, but they happen to look gorgeous, and they just took a new leaf. They have a lot of growth now, so they're having all kinds of buds. But anyway, the daisies are Gerber daisies. That's the
Okay.
question, which I have 2 outside. I have a tiny spot outside. I'm a houseplant person, let's say that. And the one that I put inside, it melted away. It gave flowers when I bought it, but it melted away. So my question to you, I had read that it could be a houseplant, but I don't know if it's, and all the leaves are gone. I don't know if it's a bulb in the soil or if it's actually dead and gone for indoors, but the 2 that I have outside are dying back as annuals. But the question would be Gerber daisies, if I bring it inside stripped of the leaves and just replant it for a houseplant, would they make it? Or it's a perennial outside, but I wonder if you happen to know, do they translate to indoors? And if it's my turn, may I show you my pandemic? We talked about this in another class, but I figured out the camera. My pandemic geraniums are the best thing ever.
I love all your windows.
Crazy. Well, this is the spot without the radiator. So they hated the sun. They've been growing here for 40 years. All the plants that were here for 40 years, and I made so many cuttings for people. Hated it here this summer, but without the radiator, I have flowers. I have hot pink, I have red, I have whites, I have crazy, amazing things. And the Diefenbachia, the Chinese evergreen, was melting for undiagnosed. It's all yellow, and this pot was melting and now is reviving. Fantastic. After I hacked it, but I don't know any secrets. If you want to talk about that, other people have talked about this, the Chinese evergreens. This one is now like regenerated, and this one looks like is melting. These are pots I had for 40 years right here, but they're doing something now.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot. I think that the sun, it's been we had to put our curtains down. We have like these types of curtains that are kind of sheer, that still let the light through, but kind of diffuse it a little bit. We had to do that during this summer. The sun just seems so much more intense. So we were, trying to keep our plants from burning. But yeah, I mean, it could honestly be, yeah, intensity of light with that yellowing, and if it was doing well when it was cutting back. So sometimes it's also, parts of the plant are just kind of aging out. They're just not producing as much anymore. And so by cutting them, that's kind of reactivates like, oh yeah, great, we're gonna push out brand new growth, and it's gonna be a lot better that way. But yeah, with the Dieffenbachias, if they're yellowing, I would say try to see if it could be something like an issue with the soil. So maybe see if there's something like, I would say to just take, if you could take a look at your roots, just make sure if you can do so kind of, very, 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 very gently, just to make sure there's nothing going on, if there's no pest or anything that's potentially harming your roots. Or it could be that there's just, there's something missing in the soil. Because if it was, let's say if it was the sun that was affecting the Dieffenbachias, so usually you'll kind of see in the leaves, they'll it's not just a yellow coloring that they'll get, it's more of like a crispiness, a brown, a blanched kind of look to them, kind of like a see-through kind of effect on the leaves when it's really getting burned. So I don't think the Dieffenbachias are getting burned. The geraniums, I can see that it looks like they might have gotten burned. But with the Dieffenbachias, I would say to maybe pursue something that's potentially an issue with the soil mix.
Thank you very much. I'll lift them. I'll say, I don't know what I'll need to get them out of these pots, but yeah, I will. I'll lift them and check the soil on the bottom. Thank you. That's a great idea. Okay, great class. Thank you.
You're very
much.
welcome. And thank you so much, everyone. Brian is signaling me because checkout's at 1. So we have everything packed. I was like, my class is gonna finish. So I was like, it's gonna be perfect timing. So he's like, he brought the cart with our bags. So he's like in the background like this. So we're gonna be heading out, but thank you so much. Oh, Adeline, thank you so much. Impatiens are definitely annuals in Saskatchewan and die down by early October. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I mean, if they're still putting out leaves and such, bring them in. Enjoy them while while they're still pumping out growth. But yeah, they might not survive the whole winter. Thank you so much, everyone. And Hank, can I bring in Mandavija during winter? I mean, I believe you can. So I have a few colleagues that have them and do actually keep them in like sunrooms during the winter. So I would assume it's perfectly fine to do so. At least it would keep it from completely freezing if you have a bad winter by you. Oh yeah, yeah. It's always I love the Q&A kind of dynamic, and that I get to see you guys too. So that's always wonderful. But thank you so much. Yeah, it's a long drive for us. So but yeah, I will see you guys next week. Have a great week. I hope your Monday's off to a good start. And yeah, please stay safe, and yeah, send me pictures of your plants. I would love to see them. So definitely share them with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's honestly always a joy. I really enjoy starting my week off with with all of you. So thank you so much. And yes, please stay safe. And I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.